Welcome here on Rock Antenne Stage, Mr. Greg Koch.
Yes.
So good to have you here.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I had this funny moment before the interview. I was standing at a booth, at a pedal booth, and there was Phil X
Yes.
checking out some pedals and chatting with the guys at the booth. And I got closer to the booth because I was trying to get a photo with Phil, but I didn't want to get him on his toes. So I was checking out the booth up until I realized that was the booth of your pedals.
Yes, at the jam booth. Yeah, the new Koch Monster pedal.
Great. Let's dive into that topic a bit.
Yes, sir.
What's new with that one?
Well, I had known the jam pedal guys from Greece for 20 years or so. And Yanni, who's the commander-in-chief of all things jam, he reached out to me, I think, back in the day when it was on MySpace, and I was coming to do a thing at the Gothenburg Guitar Show.
Okay.
And our band was playing there, and he reached out and he's like, "Hey, would you like to try out my pedals?" And he came to the gig and he brought a pedal board, and I loved his pedals. They were awesome. So then we just got into a relationship, and he'd send me some pedals, and then he made me a multi-effect with like maybe 6 different pedals of theirs. And their artwork is always really cool. I mean, they're
Super cool.
super cool.
Yeah.
So then, time passed, and, we played their anniversary party, and, we worked on various different things. And then he's like, maybe it'd be a good idea for us to do a signature, like, multi-effect. So the idea was to do kind of a more condensed version where there'd maybe be like 4 pedals and then something that had like everything on it. And then they're like, well, what name should we call it? And then I came up with a few different versions, and then they came up with the Koch Monster. And I thought, perfect.
Well, let's go with that.
So then we have the Koch Monster, and then they made, of course, their graphic. They came up with this creature that was the Koch Monster. And orange is kind of my thing. So one is, the smaller version is like a matted orange. And then the Koch Monster Supreme is this orange sparkle creature, and it has the wah on it and different, a couple different delays and different modulating effects that I like to use. It's got a really great univibe on it. It has a version of my Gristle King pedal, which is usually only available on stuff that my buddy Tim Yarning invented it, and Fishman makes them for us. So as a standalone unit, it's available always through me, but it's the only available version on the jam pedal is on this Koch Monster Supreme. And so it just has come out here at this show.
Super interesting. I haven't actually had the chance to try it out yet, but I tried to.
Yeah, it's an excellent device. Both of them are very, very cool.
So let's get real. What street price are we talking about?
I don't know 100%. I think, the big one's got like everything on it, and it's like $2,000. Whereas the smaller one is, I think, like $780, about $800. I had some guy online like, $800. Like, yeah, but Gem pedals, if you bought 5 of their pedals, it would be more than that.
Yeah.
So their pedals are great. They're hand wired. They're great variations on classic designs that are more ergonomically friendly, and they do cool things. And so the pedals as standalone are not inexpensive. So a multi-pedal is obviously going to be priced accordingly. So, but when you consider everything that's on it, it's a good deal.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that you forget if you have like a multi-effect or like an analog multi-effect that has so many effects that if you buy them single,
yes,
it'll be like a lot more.
A lot of money. Yeah.
There's several times I stare down on my pedal board and it's only 5 pedals, and if I look there, I go like, fuck, it's like a whole lot of money on there.
Yes.
Although it's just 5 pedals.
Right.
Okay, let's get back to your playing and your tone. And there was this very impressive moment yesterday evening when Vincent Garcia entered the stage.
Yes.
So I had the opportunity to chat with Vincent before the show last night, and he was such a nice guy, and he's such an impressive bass player.
Yes.
So skilled and so on point. And so how does it feel for you if you play with these young cats like Vincent Garcia, and for example, Charles Batu.
Yeah, yes.
Is that a new movie that you have on stage when you play with them?
Well, you know what? They play great, and they've got a good feel, and of course they got chops. Charles just wanted to play the tunes and not do any solos, and I was totally cool with that because he likes to have more of a kind of an arranged thing when he takes solos, which is fine. That's some way some people
Yeah.
roll. Excuse me. And but Vincent was just ready to rock, and thank you. He kind of reached out. I got an email from him. Hey, I understand you're doing the jam. Do you want to do something? So I have this song of mine that I wrote many years ago. That's kind of just a cool little funk song, and Roscoe Beck had played on it originally. And I thought, man, if you wanted to learn that song, that would be awesome. And I had a chart for it. So I sent him the audio of it, and then I sent him the chart, and he's like, I'll do that song. That sounds good. So, and he nailed it. It was awesome. And it's a very intense song. I mean, it starts and it's relentless.
It was surprisingly super in the pocket. It seemed that you've played for years.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knows the circumstance that these guys have before such a show. It's just a small rehearsal in the morning.
Right. We ran through it once, and that was it.
That's it. And you've never met before, right?
Never met. Yep.
So it's impressive how good and well you guys gel together.
Well, the trio that I'm in with my son on drums and Toby, who plays left-hand bass usually, we are such a well-oiled machine that we can add a piece in, and as long as that person is using their ears, and has the ability to kind of respond to what's happening, it'll lock in super quick. And Vincent was more than up to the challenge.
Yeah, it was very, very nice to see that your keyboarder actually had the opportunity to shine even more on the keyboards because he didn't have to deal with the bass anymore.
Yep.
That was something that he could really see, that he was like gelling into the B3 sounds and making some noise, and that was impressive.
Yes, he's a bad boy, that Toby Lee Marshall. Yep.
Oh yeah. Well, the level of musicianship is very, very high here, and you guys really ripped it last night.
Well, thank you.
So I think Matteo Mancuso was on stage as well, right?
He was. He played before us, and he was going to jam with us, but his schedule was so full because he had jammed the night before. He had his show right before us, and he had something else going on, so it didn't work out. But we had talked. He's like, next time we'll think it out a little bit more beforehand, and we'll.
Okay, I'm asking this because I had to leave the show earlier than planned, and I've seen his showcase before. And I was curious if he joined you on stage, but you just answered it.
Right. No, he did not this time. But we have planned to do it again at some point in the future.
Because Matteo, he will actually be interviewed after you here on stage. He is an amazing player.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt about it.
Amazing. So let's dive a little bit into the gear universe of your stuff. You got a signature model with Reverend guitars.
Correct.
And
three different versions.
I was just gonna say, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. The first one that we did was more of a standard Telly type guitar, and the reason why we did it is because I had these pickups that I had done with Fishman, Telly style pickups, the Fluence gristle tone pickups for the Fluence technology is very, very cool. It's basically aerospace thin circuit boards with a coil printed on them, and then you stacked up those things around traditional magnetic pole pieces, and then there's a preamp on board, and they had developed software that we could voice them in real time, going back and forth between standard type of pickups that we liked.
Wow.
And then figure out, by the time we were done, I preferred the sounds that we were getting versus, the holy grail ones we were kind of going after. So, and then there you can have multiple voices. So those pickups were really unique and cool. And I had them originally on a Fender Custom Shop guitar that I liked. And with my history with Fender, it would have made sense to do something with Fender. but they were not interested. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just do whatever I want to do in terms of play the guitar that I want to play. And then with Ken, from Reverend, we're buddies, and we had done a ton of video stuff at Wild Guitars out in Colorado, where I do a lot of that videos content stuff. And one day I was at a NAMM show. I think it was in Nashville, and Reverend was advertising, a party. They always have the coolest posters for after show parties. There's a party, Reverend party on Saturday night. I'm like, Ken, how can I play at one of your parties? He's like, well, you have to play a Reverend guitar. I'm like, okay, well, would you mind putting some of my Fishman pickups and like maybe one of those Pete Anderson Eastsider guitars? He's like, absolutely, not a problem. So he put some of my pickups in that guitar, and I got it. And it's $1,000 guitar. It's not an expensive instrument. And I was playing it, and I was like, there's some differences between that and my $4,000 custom shop guitar, but there's not $3,000 worth of difference. You know what I
I
mean?
was just gonna say, I know the guitars. They're pretty damn good.
Yes, and so I was like, it had me scratching my head. So then that became my main performance guitar, was this Reverend, $1,000 guitar with my pickups in it. So then we just started talking. It's like, hey, if you ever want to do a signature instrument, we'd love to talk about it. Because if you don't want to do it, we're still buddies. It's not a big deal. So my ideas, which I had pitched to Fender long ago, was just the idea of just a slightly larger body, because I'm 6'7", and every time I'm playing someone's guitar, they're like, is that a ukulele? Is that a 3/4 size guitar? And so we decided to make it a little bit larger. And then Joe Naylor, who's, the designer of all the Reverend stuff, he's like, hey, you have I have this cool Firebird Telecaster thing that this guy made for me. And it's a Firebird body with a bolt-on telly neck, telly bridge, telly controls, and then a Firebird neck pickup. Of course, it's got the raised middle section. Oh, sorry. And so lo and behold, he's like, why don't we do that raised section on your guitar as well? I was like, cool. So we have like a raised middle section, slightly larger body, and then we have my pickups on there. We have a little kind of a parchment pickguard material surround around the neck pickup that originally was metal, because I wanted it to kind of look like a Firebird-ish. But that metal was messing with the impedance of the pickup. Because I got the guitar, I was like, listen, it looks great, it sounds great, except the neck pickup seems a little wimpier than it should be. And I got all the heights right, so I don't know what's going on. He's like, it's probably the metal that's surrounding the pickup. And so we solved it by just putting parchment, regular plastic around it, and it worked great.
I thought it was a design thing.
No, it was originally it was originally going to be metal, and then once we saw the white plastic, I was like, that looks cool, even cooler, in kind of a weird Art Deco.
I was just gonna say,
yeah,
I thought it was just a design purpose or something like that. Never imagined that it had an actual purpose.
Yeah. So then we're like, okay, let's go with that. So we did that, and I love that guitar. That's like my main battle axe. But I do have kind of Gibson proclivities, and I love the sound of P90s, but I don't like the noise that they make. So we developed, I had an idea to develop new pickups with Fishman that would be P90s that utilize the same technology that we used for the telly pickups, something that would sound great, but have two voices, and then have kind of maybe a cool out of phase option. So we worked all that out. And then I wanted them to appear on a new Reverend instrument that had the same body style, but was set neck, and then Gibson scale with an ebony fingerboard and a Bigsby on it. Okay. So that became what was the Gristle 90. And so I love that guitar quite a bit. I've gravitated towards using those for slide. So I keep one, I bring one along, and it's tuned to Open G, and that's what I use for my Open G slide stuff. And then I got a hankering for Strats. I've played Strats for years. And then at one point, it was like in the late, I think like 2007 or something like that, I got so sick and tired of Strats being temperamental and going out of tune. And, and always dealing with that issue with Strats of being on that bridge pickup and just like, could it just be a little fatter sounding? Should I put some kind of a single space humbucker in there? Always this kind of quandary. And then realizing, a Telecaster sounds great. There's 3 positions.
And 2 pickups.
They all sound good. They don't go out of tune. You can use them as a weapon. Someone gets out of line, you just bludgeon them, and you're good. And as I've said a million times, my little quote of, after the apocalypse, there will be cockroaches and Telecasters, and the
Telecasters.
Telecasters will be in tune.
And Keith Richards.
Exactly. And so, but I like the idea of coming up with a Strat, and the Reverend guitar that they had done. They did a Gil Paris guitar. It's no longer around, but it was a Gil Paris guitar that had Fishman Fluence pickups in it, with a Wilkinson bridge on it. And they sent me one of those things, and it sounded great, and it stayed in tune. So I could do all my Strat stuff, and it stayed in tune. The pickup sounded great. I loved it. But I had an idea for tweaking the Fishman pickups a little bit, even though I still really love just the regulars, as they call them, their single width pickups. It's basically their Strat set. We worked on a version of the pickups that, I love the old Clapton Strats because there's a preamp on there, and I love the ones that they did with, even though you mentioned lace sensor, people are like, lace sensor, but the lace sensor pickups with the Clapton preamp back in the day had a thing. His 80s tone where he played that Clapton Strat with the lace sensor pickups into that Soldano amp, it had a thing.
Definitely.
And but there were certain things about it I didn't like. There's things I loved, things I didn't. So I would always find myself getting one of those guitars and then selling it, then getting another one and selling it. So finally, not too long ago, I bought another one. And again, the lace sensor ones sound to me, it's a better match for that circuit than the noiseless pickups they came out with afterward. Anyway, so I had this idea. It's like, maybe something in that realm would be cool. So we started messing around, and we came, again, by the time we ended up, it was something different that I thought was superior to my ears anyway. So it's a Strat set where you got all the sparkle it's got a cool kind of glassy sparkle in the 4 and the 2 position. But all 3 single pickups by themselves sounds great. And the bridge pickups got some gumption. And then when you pop up the tone control to get the second voice, it's a nice boost. So you can definitely, like if I'm playing slide and I'll be in the bridge position, I'll pop up that tone control, and it's Fat City.
It's pretty smart option to have. Yeah.
Right. And then I also put a blend switch in so I can blend in to get the back front pickup combination and then all 3 pickups on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that set is
neat.
Is unique. It's a cool thing.
Unique, yeah.
And of course, it is noiseless as well. And so when we started designing the guitar, we kind of went with the similar design concept of slightly larger body, raised middle section, smaller pickguard that fits underneath the raised middle section. And then I like the roasted maple necks, compound radius, of course, the locking tuners. But what's interesting is we picked some cool colors. I always like kind of a Daphne blue or a Sonic blue. We call it Blucifer.
Okay.
Excuse me, sorry. And then we went with this, but Reverend has this cool avocado burst, which I think is just awesome looking. It kind of looks like an old school Burns guitar or something, And it's one of those things where it's people either really like it or they don't. But the people that really like it, and the people that don't like it, they can move on to the blue or they do a really good conventional 3-tone sunburst as well. So those are the 3 colors we went with, and it just came out September 20th. So those are getting out and about now, and people seem to really be digging them.
I've only seen them online, and I think it's there's an intriguing price aspect. They're really affordable for. I mean, it's lots of bang for the buck. That was what I was trying to say.
Well, yeah, because especially in the world of the super Strats, I mean, there's a lot of guitars out there, and they're not cheap.
No.
and then of course you have the Fender Custom Shop stuff, which is getting way up there in price.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I was surprised. Like a friend of mine offered me a Custom Shop Telly team build a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "I make a good price." And I was like, "Okay, what?" And he goes like $4,000.
Yeah.
I go like, "Man, I know it's a custom build, but no."
Yeah, you know, it gets. I was talking to a buddy of mine not too long ago, and we were talking about buying guitars. And I go, you know, my sweet spot's about $3,500. And then I listened to myself, like, that's insane. I mean, from where we came from, you know, growing up when you bought, I mean, I bought my 335 for 600 and some odd bucks back in 1983.
Those times are gone
Right. And
long.
that same guitar now would be 6 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy because I worked a summer job and I saved up money to buy that guitar. There's no kid working a summer job that's going to save $6,000 to buy a guitar.
No way.
So it's gotten a little crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why I love the fact that the Reverend guitars, they're quality instruments. They sound great. They do something different.
And they look
They
good.
look different,
Yeah.
and they're affordably priced, and it's not, you know, predatory.
So did I get it right? Are they chambered a bit?
There's just a little bit of a chamber.
Okay.
Down by the pick guard, there's a little space in there, but
Okay.
but really the reason why they're weight relieved in a way is that middle section that's raised like a Firebird is actually the conventional width of like a Telly or a Strat. So everything else is recessed just a little bit. So that is just
okay.
enough, along with that little space that they have underneath the pick guard.
Yeah.
To provide that they're like 7.5 pounds.
Okay. Well, it's good to have a light guitar. um, you offer a wide range of sounds with the instrument, but you offer even more wide range with your influences and the music that you did play when you play live. I heard funk, I heard jazz, I heard rock, blues. So if you go back to the spark that made you play guitar and to the posters on the wall in your
Yes,
childhood room,
I had
what were your
awesome
idols?
posters on
What
the
were
wall.
your
By the way,
idols?
my whole wall was posters, and it was epic. And it was, you know, Hendrix, Clapton, Led Zeppelin, Jeff Beck, Dwayne Allman, Dickie Betts, Mark Knopfler, B.B. King, Albert Collins, you know, these type of guys. So initially, I was absolute Hendrix fanatic. And I really dug deep, and I would get a bunch of bootleg stuff. And I loved his blues playing. When he played clean blues stuff, I just loved the sound of it. Of course, not to mention his rhythm playing was absolutely ace. And of course, when he freaked out and put the feedback on and all that other kind of stuff. But you know, I like to refer to "Axis Bold as Love" as my absolute favorite recording.
Fair enough.
If that would be my Desert Island guitar or Desert Island record.
Yeah.
If I had one record, it'd be "Axis Bold as Love." But I also love Cream Era Clapton. Loved it. To this day, I just love listening to his phrasing, his tone, his attitude. Then was just, you know, supreme. And then, of course, that led me back to the Blues Breakers record, and so I had that. But then I started digging into all the different, you know, people that they listened to because I read up on these guys right away, and I would see, you know, B.B. King, Albert King, Freddie King, T-Bone Walker, Buddy Guy, Otis Rush. And so I did the deep dive on all these guys as well. I listened to a bunch of Muddy Waters. I saw Muddy Waters when I was 14 years old. I loved Howlin' Wolf. There's a blues program that would be on the public radio station every night, and I would record it on my cassette thing and listen back to it. And so there was a lot of blues, a lot of classic rock stuff. Loved Zeppelin. Loved Jeff Beck, especially the Truth record was my favorite.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah.
And then I got into the more, you know, Wired and Blow by Blow, but Truth was always my favorite, just because it was just this quirky way of approaching blues rock. You know, he never played stock licks, but it was there was a simplicity and just snarkiness to his playing that I always dug. But then I saw the Allman Brothers live, and it just blew my mind. So I absolutely loved the Allman Brothers, Dwayne, Dickie, all the different incarnations. Loved them all. And then, of course, you know, I started getting into some jazz stuff. But almost right around the same time I started playing, I heard Albert Lee for the first time. And my first embryonic playing of country stuff was a combination of Albert Lee stuff and then Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers. I started doing chicken picking that I learned actually from listening to Dire Straits records, and I would chicken pick Dickie Betts licks. His major pentatonic, all those fiddle licks that he would do. And then I kind of had this gestation of all these different styles even then. So, every now and again I'll come across a recording of when I was a teenager, and it's not that dissimilar to how I play now. I mean, the basic template was there very early on. And I just started adding stuff to it. I mean, I always wanted to have my own band, do my own material, and have it be a culmination of all the different styles. But really, at the crux of it is this blues rock, greasy, funky thing. That's where it all stems from, and everything else is just on top of it.
But those are really strong musical roots that you just named. It's pretty impressive roots. When it comes to musical roots, you play with your son in your band.
Yes.
So that's something very special, I guess, to do. Father and son in the band, and I gotta say, your son is a badass drummer.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the weirdest thing about Dylan was when he was a very little kid, he just gravitated towards drum. Like when he was like 2 or 3 years old, he would grab whatever, spoons, whatever wooden things, and I'd be with a friend listening to some music in the other room, and he would come in and he would just start drumming, but he always knew where 2 and 4 was. And even if it was a song he didn't know, he would like instinctively know where the stops were. And my friends would look at me like, "What's up with this kid?" I was like, "I have no idea." And then we got him his first little drum kit when he was like 2.
Yeah.
And then he just knew, as I said, he knew where 2 and 4 was and just instinctively felt it. And he just kind of would mess around a little bit with drums until he was about in 5th grade. And then he really started playing. And there was a couple of like guitar prodigy kids in the area. One was this kid, Talon Latz, and he ended up being on the Today Show and WGN. And he had this band, and my son was the drummer in the band.
So what kind of music were
It was blues rock.
all in? Okay.
Yeah. And but he always played in the jazz band as well. So he did, so he was playing like TV shows and festivals when he was, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. And then he went down to the Memphis International Blues Challenge in the youth category with Jared Nichols. So Jared was from our area, and he would rehearse in our basement with my son and this other buddy of ours, kid named Andrew Koenig, who's a great guitar player. But then he played bass in this trio, and so they went down to, I think Dylan was 14 or something like that. Jared was maybe 17.
That's a funny coincidence.
Yeah, and so that was crazy.
Oh yeah.
And so then Dylan, he got a scholarship to be in this kind of hot shot. They kind of tried out kids from all the area in Milwaukee to be in this super jazz program at the place called the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music. And he did that all through high school. And it was, he played in a combo. They got lessons. They had listening sessions and yeah. So he wasn't a huge jazz fan, but he learned what he needed to do. And there were certain aspects of it. Of course, he learned a lot from having to be in that environment and understand how to do it. And I think the moment I knew that he was ready was when we were playing this local festival in my hometown, and I was playing there with my trio, and Dylan came out with some of his friends, and he was taking some lessons from the drummer I had at the time. It was Del Bennett. And I said to Del, I go, "Hey Del, do you mind if Dylan sits in on a song?" He's like, "Sure, no problem." So Dylan comes up and he sits behind the drum kit, and I go, "What tune do you want to do?" He goes, "Let's do one of those Band of Gypsy songs." I go,
Okay.
I go, "Really?"
Okay.
He goes, "Let's do that Message to Love song." I'm like, "Okay." So I counted off, and it's on YouTube. Someone had filmed it, and they put it
it's
on
captured.
And he nailed it. I mean, and there's times in there where it's like, it kind of breaks down, and it's just me and the drums, and you got to know how to count it back in. and he nailed it. And
Wow.
so,
Okay.
and after that happened, I was like, what? And then, he'd take lessons from Tom Breckline when Tom was playing in my band for a while. And he'd sit down with Tom, and Tom would show him stuff. And we did this show again when he was in high school. And it was me and Roscoe Back and Tom Breckline. And Tom's like, let's have Dylan sit in on a song. And so Dylan came out and he played Spanish Castle Magic and just annihilated it. So Tom has been a big advocate for Dylan all along, and that's meant a lot to Dylan because obviously Tom Breckline is one of the best ever to do it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he comes by it honestly, and the whole reason why I have this band with Toby is because of Dylan. Dylan was playing in a band up in Minneapolis. Minneapolis is about 5 hours away from Milwaukee, where I live. And he would keep coming back saying, hey, I'm doing gigs with this keyboard player up there. You got to hear this guy. And I'm like, yeah, but that's 5 hours away, dude. When am I going to hear him?
Just to get a glimpse.
Exactly. And then one day, Dylan says to me, hey, Toby's coming down next week. He's interested in buying a Leslie from some guy down here. So he's driving down. We should jam. And I'm like, okay. Well, let me know the day before. That time, I'm traveling all over the place. When I'm home, I got to get a lot of stuff done. And so jamming with my son's friends is not,
A top priority.
the top priority. So the day before Toby was going to be in town, he's like, Dad, Toby's going to be here tomorrow. I'm like, well, we'll just go down in the basement and jam a little bit. I got that keyboard down there. He's like, he's not going to play that piece of shit. He plays Hammond B3. I'm like, well, what do you suggest? And he's like, let's have him bring in the B3 and we'll set it up in the living room. I'm like, oh yeah, your mom's going to love that. So I called up the studio the day of. It was I think it was like on a Thursday morning. And I called up my buddy Steve, who has a studio, who I know he has a B3 all wired up and ready to go, drum set ready to go. I said, Steve, I know you don't know what this means, but Toby's coming into town today. And he's a B3 player. And we want to jam. We're just wondering if you could just turn the lights on for us, plug in the power, and we'll just jam for a while and we'll leave when we're done. He's like, well, better than that, I'll have everything wired up and we'll record it. I'm like, wicked. So we showed up, we plugged in, got a little sound, made sure everything worked. And I just said, let's just play a shuffle in G. And I made up a little melody on the spot. And that first notes we ever played together ended up being the first tune on a record that got signed and put out. And it's insane. So the first 2 songs on the record are the first 2 tunes we ever played together. It was immediate.
Wow. Okay.
So the very first moments we played, we're listening back on.
Chemistry was there.
Yeah. We're
Okay.
good.
Okay. We nearly at the end of our time.
Yes.
One last short question, because I forgot to ask that particular important piece of equipment. What kind of amps and or combos are you playing?
I'm playing Tone King. So
okay.
I had played a Tone King Imperial for years as my main amp at Wildwood when I would do all the videos. And then at some point we were using a Tone King Imperial for the clean sound, and we were using a Friedman for the lead sound. And then I got hooked up with Koch amplifiers, which is my same last name. We're not related.
Mm-hmm.
But we developed some cool amps that were great. And then that relationship kind of had just run its course. And so I was kind of interested in, and plus when we designed those amps, in all honesty, it was before I had this band. And this band is loud. I mean, it's a lot, even when we're playing quiet, it's still loud. I love it when we'll do a sound check at like a quarter of the volume. And they're like, it's a little loud. I'm like, you have no idea of what loud is.
Okay.
So I needed something that just sounded different, that could be, because I was having to use 2 of the other amps. So I ended up trying out a Tone King Royalist, which is it's kind of a 2-channel Marshall-y type of thing with attenuators.
How many watts are we talking about?
It's 45, but
that's enough.
But it cuts.
Oh yeah.
So like on stage last night, I'm standing next to everyone's got 412 cabinets, and I was ripping their heads off. I mean, and I had the attenuator on. So it definitely can, it projects. So
Okay.
It's been awesome. And what's great about it too is if I'm in a room, it's a small room, I just turn it around and use the attenuator. It's more than loud enough. It sounds awesome.
Wow.
So I've been loving that amp. And then I still use the Imperial. So when I was doing the workshops around here, I've been using the Imperial. The Imperial's like a hot rodded Fender Deluxe reverb.
Okay.
Whereas the other amp I use is more like a JTM 45.
Okay. Well, Greg, thank you so much to
My pleasure.
taking the
Thanks
time
for having me.
Yeah, that was Greg Koch, everybody.
Thank you all.
We're at the end of our time. My name is Marcel Tenet. Thank you all for showing up, and we'll have a short break, and we'll be right back.
Perfect.